Good morning. I am Susan Eileen, and this is Coach Joe. And in response to National Recovery Month and the upcoming Sober October, Coach Joe and I have decided to do a series of podcasts. This one is more geared toward if you are sober curious and you have been thinking about eliminating your drug of choice or particular addiction. Remember, it can be shopping or gambling. It doesn't have to be something that actually goes into your body. But before the process of recovery can start, first you have to admit that you have a problem.
Great to be with you today, Susan Eileen. So yes, I am Coach Joe. Susan and I have known each other for about probably close to 2 years now.
Yes.
In her journey in recovery. Today we're going to talk about Recovery Month and the first step, which is dealing with denial. So I'll actually just want to kind of turn it over to Susan to start the conversation because she's lived it.
Yes, I will have 4 years sober in December. So yeah, it is unbelievable how much my life has improved. Absolutely astounding how much my life has improved. But in terms of denial, I was in denial for many years, had multiple rock bottoms, and even with all of the evidence facing me, I was still in denial. It took losing almost everything, including my life, to shake me out of denial. And our premise has always been a quit while you're ahead approach. There's absolutely no reason to go all the way to rock bottom, because obviously, as you see on the news, there are a lot of people that use that don't wake up. They overdose and they never even had the chance to try recovery, which is realistically the ultimate rock bottom is death. But my apparently favorite type of denial when I was in active addiction was minimization. And so I called it being an at-leaster. So I had originally tried 12-step programs before I subscribed to Coach Joe's 5-step program. And 12-step programs didn't work for me for a number of reasons. But one thing that I would do in meetings when other people would talk, I would always compare notes. And at least I'm not like them. Like, look at how bad that person is. I've never had a DUI. Of course, that was a yet of my addiction. As I said, that was on the horizon. I just didn't know it yet. But I would look at people and say, well, they have a felony and they have 5 DUIs, or they're actually doing sexual favors, or mine is only alcohol. Any at least I could possibly think of to continue to use. Another one, which is called optimism bias, is that I'll be able to throttle it back. I know things are rough right now, but I'm just going through a rough patch, and before you know it, I'll be a social drinker again. I mean, I was a social drinker for years before things started going south. I just need to, I'll be able to get it back in control. I'll be able to, if I stay awake late at night and do the math long enough, I will return to social drinking.
Susan, when we first got together, I would have to say your catchphrase was at least.
Yeah.
At least I'm not that. At least I'm not this. And that at least turns into that things are going to work out. This is just temporary. At least I'm not doing this. But it's been an interesting journey, and that's why we're together now, working with folks that are faced with the challenges of addictive behavior. There's some really cool things that are going to be coming out in the future, but the avoidance coping, I think, is something that comes up next which is when you talk about avoidance coping, you're avoiding those things that are hurtful to you, that just are uncomfortable. And part of that is what it might be anxiety, it might be some past trauma. There's trauma leads to a lot of addictive behavior, whether it was something all the way back in childhood, or maybe because I am a coach, a harassing situation at work, that type of thing.
And I would like to say that most people don't put two and two together, that they're self-medicating trauma. I would say typically what ends up happening is emotional trauma can cause concentration difficulties, it can cause insomnia, it can cause some other erratic personality behaviors, and then you end up drinking or taking an anxiety pill or whatever it is that you like to do, because that will actually then help you sleep at night. That will then help you concentrate, because I don't think you're fully consciously registering that you are self-medicating a genuine psychiatric concern. The psychiatric concern is manifesting itself with insomnia, trouble concentrating, and things like that.
Absolutely. And that, Susan just brought up a great point, because as we have talked about at length, there are always comorbidities. And in order to be successful in your recovery journey, you need to be able to treat or have treatment for those comorbidities. Part of what fuels some of my addictive behavior is having ADHD. And having the medication along with behavioral changes in my life has made a huge difference. But it would not have happened without the medication. So you always want to seek professional help.
Yes, and that is why realistically 12-step programs did not work, because the program, Joe's 5-step program, really promotes a holistic approach that involves psychiatric care, therapy, good nutritional health, exercise. It is a multifaceted approach. You're not just targeting just the addiction, you're sort of, having that focus on your whole life. Because realistically, your addiction has affected your whole life. It has affected your nutrition. It has affected your sleep. It has affected your career.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which kind of leads us into the control fallacy. So, Susan, why don't you walk through the control fallacy? Because I think you can have some. It's kind of like the at-leaster, but it's a little bit different with your own journey.
Well, the control fallacy, you're basically saying, I can stop anytime I want to, but realistically, I don't have a problem. If I wanted to, I could quit tomorrow. I don't want to. And often when people use the control fallacy, it's because they're convinced. They'll say things like, I'm not hurting anybody but myself, even though there's plenty of evidence to the contrary. And even if it were true that you're only hurting yourself, my question is, why are you so intent on hurting yourself?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because we have those blinders on. We don't see what it's doing to those around us, and actually, to all of us. And again, it's the substance abuse, it's the behavioral abuse. If you're gambling away your mortgage, that's a problem.
And realistically, going back to the comorbidities, is these mental health concerns like ADHD, anxiety, and insomnia are snowballing into other problems, which are not leading to very rational or clear-headed thinking. So even when you have decided to pick up that drink to help with the insomnia, you're already not at your best because you're plagued by insomnia, anxiety, and ADHD.
Absolutely, absolutely. About 25 to 30% of people that have ADHD will also have a challenge with addictive behavior.
Yes, because the ADHD causes you to seek dopamine, quick fixes of dopamine, and also they are finding that many people with ADHD are actually undiagnosed autistic people, and typically, if you're on the autism spectrum, you struggle with feeling awkward, fitting in, and some other issues that, again, you're trying to self-medicate.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the control fallacy kind of leads into a little bit what we call, because I mentioned putting blinders on. So it's called mental filtering. So you're seeing only the positive, you're downplaying the negative in terms of any given situation that you're in. So you're kind of justifying your actions because, oh, it's not as bad as all that.
All right. You would, if you're focusing on the positive, you would say, well, I've read that wine is good for your heart, that 2 glasses of wine a day will, keep fatty deposits from building up. If you're focusing on the positive, you would talk about how tasty a mimosa is. You would talk about how much, fun you're having at concerts and barbecues and bars and wherever it is, that you're using, because again, your thinking is a little distorted and you're not realizing that very large portions of the population can go to a concert, a barbecue, a graduation party, bowling, and not get tanked. If you actually sit and look around, you'll notice that oftentimes, aside from your particular group of friends, you guys might be the only ones using, and everybody else is pretty straight arrow behavior. But you're filtering that out.
Yeah, and look at the reality of today. If you're going to spend the amount of money for a concert ticket, you're going to want to remember that you were there. So there's that dynamic.
And speaking of filtering, you're filtering out the negative impact on your finances, even if in this tough economy, even if you only want to take a 6-month break until your finances get back on track, or just to determine, sometimes people will take a temporary break in order to determine if they really have a problem. And often what you'll find is, if it is hard as hell to stay sober, you're like, I didn't realize I had a problem until I tried to quit. A lot of people find that.
Absolutely.
But you're obviously filtering out the negative impact on your finances, because if you take a look at all of the transactions, those can add up. I have an app that saves how much money that I have saved, and according to this app, I have not spent about $35,000 on alcohol. Now, in addition to that, my medical expenses are nearly non-existent. I no longer need lawyers. Because I'm at the top of my game, I have a better job and my income has gone up. I'm not calling off work. So even though according to the app I've saved $35,000, my life has done a complete, 180. My income, I was eligible for promotions more or less, where I'm earning 400% more than what I used to earn, because my work ethic has returned. But you're filtering out all of the negative impacts. You're filtering out skirting your job and all of that.
Absolutely. So this is a beautiful full circle story, because addictive behavior cost Susan a very good teaching job.
Yes.
It's taken 4 years, but now Susan is back into teaching, which is amazing.
Yes.
And it's awesome to see. We have another denial, which is a huge one. This one is the victim mentality, and it can be paralyzing. It's when you feel like you have no control over your life, that your boss sucks, your spouse sucks, everything's awful, and you have to drink to get through the day, or you have to do whatever that behavior is to get through the day.
And honestly, the first 6 months of this year, I was struggling I was wondering why I was feeling so rattled, and realistically, it's because the first 6 months of this year, I had very little control over what was going on. I found myself out of work, was struggling to find a job. Obviously, I can't control hiring managers. All I can do is keep going to interviews. I had a pipe burst at my house last year. The insurance company wasn't cooperating. The contractors weren't cooperating. I had falling outs with a couple of friends. So I had gone through a real rough patch, and it was all over stuff that was completely outside of my control. As a matter of fact, the whole snowball started with that pipe burst, and it really made me need to reevaluate a lot of aspects of my life. But it is very frazzling to not be in control of anything. And the fact that I was out of work, which is a place that I excelled, where I had control over the classroom, there was no aspect of my life really that I had control over. But because I had been in recovery long enough, and I know the hazards of victim mentality, I was able to avoid a relapse, I just kept focusing on, things will be better tomorrow, and putting one foot in front of the other, and doing what I could, and avoiding that victim mentality. But the victim mentality, if you say, I can't leave my husband because I can't afford it, and I can't get any sleep because I have 5 kids, and my boss is a jerk and is never gonna like me because my boss knows that I'm smarter than him, and he's really just jealous. And that is all examples of the victim mentality. And the victim mentality is very dangerous, even if you take away your drug of choice. And this is something we'll talk about in another podcast, but it's very easy to switch to a rescuing victim and a persecuting victim, and that vicious cycle creates a lot of drama. That drama alone can keep you addicted to your drug of choice, because now you're using the drug of choice to settle down from the drama.
It's so true. So first and foremost, the most important thing is, if Susan can weather that storm,
yes,
that was a perfect storm of everything being thrown at you,
yes,
and maintain your sobriety, it can be done.
Yes.
From anybody. The big thing that Susan had was she stayed focused on where she wanted to get to,
yes,
and she wasn't focused on what she had, which was a broken pipe, an unlivable house, and on and on and on. It was kind of honestly, the last year for you has been kind of a dumpster fire.
It really has. And it all started with that broken pipe,
Yeah.
Because the insurance company has been fighting it. But there's that expression, this was really a storm that cleared my path, because even though the insurance company fought it and it's caused a lot of problems, in the end, I really found out who my friends were. It caused me to further streamline my finances, reevaluate my values, and honestly, I would say the biggest since we're on the topic, one way you can switch from the victim mentality is into the rescuing mentality, and sort of finding people in your life that are fixer-uppers, like girls who tend to find boyfriends that are fixer-uppers. And so realistically, once I got out of that victim mentality, I treated myself as my own fixer-upper, which I had never done.
Yeah.
And now I have 2 books coming out, a job at a college, and I'm hoping to start a side business, quilting. So investing in myself for the first time ever is going to earn the highest rewards.
Absolutely. And those are some of the tenets of the program that we're doing. So what I put together and what Susan and I are collaborating on is it's a process that starts with that self-awareness, knowing
Yes.
that okay, yeah, I'm a rescuer. I've been rescuing everybody. Nobody's rescuing me.
Yes.
That how you're relating to yourself and how you're relating to other people, those around you, and then the final piece of it is the commitment with one-on-one coaching, because once you start getting into this and take a deep dive,
Yes.
you need to keep that forward momentum going.
And I like the expression deep dive, because the self-awareness is like an onion. You'll start off with identifying your strengths and your lesser strengths. And as you peel that onion away, you're actually going to find out you probably have more issues than you realize. Because certainly I know I did. And in terms of that rescuing victim, that foundation was actually laid down in childhood with my parents, who basically wanted me to rescue them. And so I was more or less trained to be a rescuing victim in childhood. And so I perpetuated that into adulthood. But that rescuing victim mentality leads to anger and resentments, which then can lead you back to your drug of choice.
Absolutely. It is.
So-
It's a long road, and you're just a great model for what is possible. And one thing that Susan mentioned early on in our discussions as we were having some coaching sessions was, you have to get used to feeling your feelings again, because a lot of this is hiding again, the coping.
And honestly, I feel that actually has been one of the biggest challenges of the last year. Is realistically, had I always been sober, or I hadn't been sort of at a deficit when this pipe burst happened, it wouldn't have been as bad. But considering I was feeling big feelings, going through the stages of grief over multiple things simultaneously during the longest stretch of sobriety I've known since I was 12. But again, I stayed sober through it because I've been learning to live life on life's terms, and life has really been lifing lately. So
that's all right. So there's a term that we may use in the future. Life has been lifing lately. So there's a good one. All right. The next one, and the last one we want to talk about today, is it's your fault. It's not mine. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if you weren't such a horrible person and you weren't treating me. Kind of goes with that victim mentality, how you're seeing other people.
Well, and this would be a classic example of this would have been one of the anti-drug commercials back in the 80s, where when the father storms in after figuring out the kid is on drugs, and the father says to the child, "Where did you learn this from?" And the child says, "I learned it from watching you." So if you are externalizing responsibility, you might say things like, "Well, this is how I grew up, and my husband is my drinking buddy." Even if you're not doing it in a negative way, this is part of my culture. This is, what we do here in the neck of was like, you're just saying like, this is the way it is. I was sort of forced into this situation, and now that I'm here, I guess I like it. But no part of this was my choice anyway. So how dare you ask me to get rid of it when you made me do it in the first place?
Absolutely.
So, and we actually did miss one, which is normalizing. Everybody's doing it, and obviously. This would be very common with alcohol, as widely accessible as it is. If you look at, I know over the last 30 years, for instance, in the 80s, cocaine seemed to be the most popular thing. People used it in clubs a lot. And then, as you transition into being a mom, then all the moms need anxiety pills to sleep, and the whole mommy needs her wine culture, and so you're avoiding responsibility again and participating in denial. with this, everybody is doing it, and if it was that bad, all of us would need to change.
Go ahead and pause it
Yes.
for a second. You can